Comics have historically been a refuge for readers facing difficult realities. During the Great Depression, superhero stories like Superman and Batman offered hope by presenting characters who could overcome overwhelming odds. Similarly, during World War II, Captain America punching Hitler became a rallying symbol for empowerment and resistance. For modern readers, comics provide a break from the daily stressors of life, offering fantastical worlds to immerse themselves in. Characters like Peter Parker, Spider-Man resonating with readers because they deal with relatable problems like financial struggles and social anxiety. Seeing a flawed individual rise to heroism instills a sense of, if they can do it, so can I. Fans often find solace in comic book fandoms, forming communities, sharing their love for characters and their stories. These groups become safe places where individuals feel understood and valued. Readers often forge these deep emotional connections to characters, seeing them as role models or mirrors of themselves. For example, marginalized readers may identify with X-Men, which was an allegory for the civil rights movement. The LGBTQ community readers see themselves in characters like Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, or even Batwoman. Over-reliance on fictional characters for emotional validation can lead to an unhealthy parasocial relationship, with readers struggling to separate fiction from reality. Many heroes and villains embody universal archetypes like shadow, villains representing our darker selves, or a hero's journey, growth through the struggle. Batman's rogue gallery, for instance, reflects different facets of his psyche: Joker as chaos, Two-Face as duality. Through conflicts and resolutions, comics allow readers to explore morality, ethics, and complex human emotions in a safe space. Now, like I said previously, the X-Men served as a metaphor for civil rights, with Professor X and Magneto representing contrasting approaches akin to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Readers learned about prejudice and acceptance through engaging narratives. A story like Marvel's Civil War mirrored post-9/11 America, exploring themes of freedom versus security. Heroes debated the need for government oversight, reflecting real-world concerns about surveillance and liberty. Characters like Swamp Thing or stories in Naomi have tackled environmental destruction, encouraging readers to think critically about their impact on the planet. In the 1950s, censorship heavily limited comics' ability to address serious topics like racism, drugs, and sexuality. Titles like Green Lantern / Green Arrow pushed back, addressing heroin addiction and social inequality despite restrictions. In countries with authoritarian regimes, underground comics have been a tool for dissent. For example, Iranian graphic novel Persepolis critiques systemic oppression. South African comics during apartheid depicted the brutality of racial segregation. Comics like Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan explore the life of a Muslim American teenager, normalizing Muslim identities in Western media. Creators are weaving narratives that combine multiple layers of identity, like Bitch Planet, which critiques sexism, racism, and capitalism in a dystopian setting. Some readers criticize modern comics for prioritizing surface-level representation over authentic storytelling, raising the question of whether comics are being used as tools for marketing rather than change. Social issues are often very complex, but comics sometimes oversimplify them for the sake of accessibility, which can lead to reductive messaging. Stories addressing contemporary issues can lead to polarizing reactions, with some fans accusing creators of being too political. Black Panther explores the theme of cultural identity, colonialism, and the African diaspora. Watchmen deconstructs the morality of heroes, addressing issues of war, media manipulation, and systemic corruption. Moss, a graphic novel that uses anthropomorphic animals to depict the Holocaust, providing a profound lens into historic trauma. But what does this all mean? How does this affect the way that we see each other in the real world? The resistance of seeing people of color in comics today ties to a deeper societal, cultural, and historic issue, many of which are rooted in the themes of representation, identity, and power dynamics. Here's a breakdown of how this connects to the broader psychological impact of comics and their role in social commentary. Many fans have a deep emotional connection to characters they grew up with, who were predominantly white due to historical lack of diversity in comics. When these characters are reimagined as people of color, it challenges a nostalgic image they had dear, creating discomfort. For some readers, superheroes represent ideals of strength, purity, and leadership. The introduction of people of color or POC heroes disrupts this idea when these readers unconsciously equate heroism with whiteness. Media has historically depicted white characters as default protagonists and anyone who is other than that as a sidekick or a stereotype. This conditioning can make it harder for some to accept POC as leading figures even in fictional narratives. People often project their real-world biases into fictional worlds they engage with. Resistance to anything that isn't white per se in comics often mirrors broader societal resistance to diversity in leadership and representation. When people of color are centered in comics, it disrupts the historical narrative of whiteness as the standard. For marginalized groups, seeing themselves as heroes like Miles Morales and Kamala Khan are empowering. For those, it feels like an intrusion on the space they've long considered their own. Comics featuring POC often highlight cultural experiences, Black Panther exploring his African heritage or Ms. Marvel focusing on her Muslim American experience. This cultural specificity may alienate readers who aren't willing to empathize or engage with unfamiliar perspectives. Now, hearing the last sentence I said, the key word that often keeps people from being able to understand other groups of people is empathy. People are unwilling to empathize and engage with unfamiliar perspectives, which ultimately stagnates a lot of opinions and how we can evolve as people. Many critics of diversity in comics argue that stories have become too political. However, this ignores the fact that comics have always been political. They have been founded in political ideology. Captain America with Hitler, X-Men as an allegory for the civil rights. The real issue is often discomfort with those politics and how they're being represented. Some fans tolerated political themes when they align with their own perspectives, patriotic wartime stories, but react negatively when those themes shift to focus on racial injustice, immigration, or other modern issues tied to anyone non-white, aka people of color. Many POC characters are introduced or reimagined by creators who want to bring authentic experiences to the medium. However, some fans perceive this as a takeover or an agenda. Longtime fans often view comics as their domain, resistant newcomers, especially those who don't match the historical demographic of the fan base, being a white male. Some fans criticize companies for prioritizing profit over authentic storytelling, for example, introducing diverse characters without meaningful development or sidelining them in favor of established, usually white, heroes can feel performative. This creates a double-edged sword. POC characters are criticized as forced diversity by detractors while being underutilized by creators, reinforcing stereotypes that diverse characters aren't marketable, when in reality, they're poorly written because they're not written by the people who have the most hands-on experience in regards to the type of character that they're trying to write about. POC readers often find empowerment in seeing characters who reflect their experiences and cultures, especially when those characters defy stereotypes. Stories like Black Panther or Miles Morales remind readers they too can be a hero, not just a sidekick or a villain. Or in Black Panther's case, they too can be a king. So the next time when you're reading a comic, and maybe has some political under, over, and middle tones, I want you to take something into consideration. Comic books, graphic novels, even a lot of original cartoons were used as means to portray political messages to people. Yes, they did involve forms of escapism, but they always had some form of political messaging behind it. So the next time you see a character that maybe doesn't look quite like you, ask yourself, do I really feel this message is too political? Or is this something that I'm not used to because the character isn't someone who looks like me?